Jake Morrison knew he was going to die tonight. The old cowboy lay in his bed inside his small wooden house on the planet called New Arizona. Outside his window he could see the red dirt and rocks that reminded him of the old American West back on Earth. The wind made strange sounds as it blew across the empty land. Jake was 73 years old and had lived on this planet for almost 50 years. The pain in his chest was getting worse. He had been sick for months but refused to go to the big city for help. This ranch was his home and he wanted to die here. Jake reached for the glass of water on the table next to his bed. His hands shook as he drank. The water tasted like metal because of the planet's strange minerals. Katie Barnes sat in the chair next to his bed. She was 28 years old with brown hair and kind eyes. Katie had been like a daughter to Jake ever since her parents died 5 years ago. The alien raiders called Zephyrians had killed them during one of their attacks on the human settlements. Katie lived in the house next to Jake's ranch and took care of him when he got sick. "Jake, you should eat something," Katie said softly. She held a bowl of soup that was still warm. The soup smelled good, but Jake shook his head. Food made him feel sick now. Everything made him feel sick, except for thinking about his family's old stories. Jake's great-grandfather had been a soldier back on Earth over 500 years ago. His name was Frank Morrison, and he fought in the American Indian Wars. Frank had told stories about meeting Apache warriors who were brave and honorable. Those stories had been passed down through Jake's family for many generations. Jake remembered his own grandfather telling him about how Frank Morrison learned to respect the Apache people and their way of life. "Katie, bring me that paper from my desk," Jake said in a weak voice. His breathing was getting harder and each word took effort. Katie got up and walked to the old wooden desk in the corner of the room. She found a legal document that looked official and important. The paper was a property deed. It said that Jake Morrison was selling his ranch to something called the Apache Nation of Earth. The price written on the paper was $1. Katie stared at the document with confusion on her face. "Jake, what is this?" she asked. "Why are you selling the ranch for $1? And who is the Apache Nation? They live on Earth, not here." Jake tried to sit up in his bed, but the pain was too strong. He fell back on his pillow and closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they looked clear and focused despite his weak body. "My family owes them a debt," Jake said slowly. "A debt that goes back 500 years. My great-grandfather Frank Morrison was saved by Apache warriors when he was young. They could have killed him, but they showed him mercy instead. They taught him about honor and respect for the land." Katie sat back down in her chair and held the paper carefully. She did not understand why Jake was thinking about old Earth stories when he was dying on this distant planet. The ranch was worth millions of credits because of its location. 3 major space trade routes passed near Jake's land. The Galactic Defense Force had tried to buy the ranch many times to build a military base there. The Apache taught my great-grandfather that some promises are more important than money, Jake continued. They showed him that a man's word should mean something. Frank promised that if his family ever had the chance to help the Apache people, they would do it. Outside the house, the sounds of the night were getting louder. Strange animals that lived on New Arizona made howling noises in the distance. Sometimes those sounds were not animals at all, but alien ships flying overhead. The Zephyrians often came at night to scout human settlements before their attacks. Jake reached under his pillow and pulled out an old communication device. It was a quantum transmitter that could send messages across the galaxy instantly. These devices were expensive and most farmers could not afford them. Jake had bought his transmitter years ago and kept it hidden for emergencies. "When I die tonight, this device will automatically send a message to Earth," Jake told Katie. "It will go to the Apache Nation and tell them that Frank Morrison's great-grandson kept his family's promise. The ranch will belong to them." Katie looked worried and confused. "But Jake, they are thousands of light years away on Earth. How can they own a ranch here? And why would you give away everything you worked for your whole life?" Jake smiled for the first time in weeks. His face looked peaceful despite the pain he was feeling. "Because some things are more important than owning land, Katie. Some things are about keeping your word and paying your debts. The Apache Nation will know what to do with this ranch." The wind outside was getting stronger and Katie could hear metal creaking as it hit the barn and fences. The ranch covered thousands of acres and had the best water sources in the region. Jake's cattle were some of the healthiest on the planet because of the good grazing land. Many people wanted to buy the ranch, but Jake had always refused to sell. "The Zephyrians will come for this land when they hear I'm dead," Jake said quietly. They know how important this location is for controlling the trade routes. They will try to take it by force and kill anyone who stands in their way. Katie felt scared when Jake talked about the alien raiders. The Zephyrians were insect-like creatures that flew in fast ships and attacked human colonies without warning. They took whatever they wanted and killed anyone who tried to stop them. The human military tried to protect the settlements, but there were too many planets and not enough soldiers. Jake closed his eyes and his breathing became very slow and quiet. Katie thought he might be falling asleep, but then he spoke again in a whisper. "The Apache know how to fight enemies who think they are stronger," he said. "They know how to protect their people and their land. Trust me, Katie. When the Apache receive my message, they will come. And when they come, the Zephyrians will learn what real warriors can do." As the night grew darker, Jake Morrison prepared to die, knowing that he had kept his family's 500-year-old promise. Jake Morrison died at 3:47 in the morning. Katie Barnes held his hand as his breathing stopped and his body became still. The old cowboy looked peaceful lying in his bed with the morning light starting to come through his window. Katie cried quietly as she said goodbye to the man who had been like a father to her. At the exact moment Jake died, his quantum transmitter activated automatically. The device had been programmed to wait for his heart to stop beating before sending its message. The transmission traveled instantly across thousands of light years to reach Earth in less than a second. On Earth, in the desert lands of the American Southwest, the Apache Nation had its government buildings on the same reservation where their ancestors had lived for centuries. The main council building was made of adobe and stone in the traditional style, but filled with the most advanced computer equipment in the galaxy. Chief Samuel Running Bear was 62 years old with long silver hair that he wore in 2 braids. His face was weathered from years of working in the desert sun, but his dark eyes were sharp and intelligent. He was meeting with the tribal council when the quantum message arrived on his personal communication device. The device made a soft beeping sound, and Chief Running Bear looked at the small screen. The message was marked as urgent and came from the planet New Arizona. The chief had never heard of anyone from his tribe living on that distant world. He opened the message and began to read. "To my brothers of the Apache Nation," the message began. "I am Jake Morrison, the great-grandson of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison, who served at Fort Apache in 1872. My family has carried a debt of honor for over 500 years. Your people showed mercy to my ancestor when they could have chosen revenge. They taught him the true meaning of courage and respect for the land." Chief Running Bear stopped reading and looked up at the other council members. They could see from his expression that something important was happening. The chief's granddaughter, Maria Running Bear, was sitting at the computer terminal near the back of the room. She was 26 years old and had studied at the best schools on Earth and other planets. "Maria, come here," the chief said in their native language. "I need you to read this message and tell me what you think." Maria walked over and read the quantum transmission on her grandfather's device. Her face became serious as she understood what Jake Morrison was telling them. She looked at the attached legal documents and coordinates that came with the message. "Grandfather, this man is giving us his ranch on New Arizona," Maria said. "It says here that the property is worth millions of credits and sits on a strategic location near major space trade routes. But there is more. According to these military reports, the planet is under constant attack from alien raiders called Zephyrians." Chief Running Bear stood up slowly and walked to the window of the council chamber. Outside, he could see the red desert mountains where his people had lived and fought for thousands of years. His ancestors had been warriors who protected their families and their land from enemies, who tried to take what belonged to them. "Tell me about Lieutenant Colonel Frank Morrison," the chief said to Elder Joseph Windwalker, who was the keeper of tribal history and traditions. Joseph was 70 years old and knew more stories about the past than anyone else in the tribe. Elder Windwalker closed his eyes and thought for a moment. When he opened them, he began to speak in the ancient storytelling way of their people. "Frank Morrison was a young soldier who came to our lands in 1872, Elder Windwalker said. "He was part of the army that was sent to fight us and force us to live on reservations. But Frank Morrison was different from the other soldiers. When he was wounded in battle and left behind by his own men, our warriors found him dying in the desert." The elder paused and looked around the room at the faces of the council members. They were all listening carefully to the old story. "Our war chief could have killed the wounded soldier," Elder Windwalker continued. It would have been easy and no one would have blamed him. But the war chief saw something in Frank Morrison's eyes. He saw a man who respected our courage even though we were enemies. So our warriors saved his life and taught him our ways. Chief Running Bear nodded as he remembered hearing this story when he was a child. His own grandfather had been one of the warriors who found Frank Morrison in the desert. Frank Morrison lived with us for 3 months while his wounds healed, Elder Windwalker said. He learned our language and our customs. He saw how we cared for our families and protected our land. When he finally left to return to his own people, he promised that he would never forget what we taught him. He said that if his family ever had the chance to help the Apache Nation, they would do it. Maria Running Bear was reading more of the documents that came with Jake Morrison's message. Her expression became worried as she learned about the situation on New Arizona. "Grandfather, the Zephyrians are planning a major attack on the human settlements," she said. "According to this intelligence report, they want to take control of Jake Morrison's ranch because of its strategic location. If they succeed, they will be able to control all the trade routes in that sector of space." Chief Running Bear walked back to his chair and sat down. He picked up an ornate war club that had belonged to his great-grandfather. The club was decorated with eagle feathers and turquoise stones in the traditional Apache style. It had been carried in many battles over the centuries. "How many people live on New Arizona?" the chief asked. "Over 50,000 humans in various settlements," Maria replied. "Most of them are farmers and ranchers like Jake Morrison. They have very little military protection because the planet is so far from the main human colonies." Chief Running Bear stood up and held the war club above his head. The other council members knew that this was a signal for an important decision. Jake Morrison kept his great-grandfather's promise, the chief said in a strong voice. "Now we must keep ours. The Apache Nation will answer this call for help. We will go to New Arizona and fight these alien raiders just as our ancestors fought to protect their land." Elder Windwalker smiled and nodded his approval. "The spirits of our ancestors will guide us. We are exactly where we need to be." Chief Running Bear turned to his granddaughter. "Maria, send word to all the warriors. Tell them to prepare for battle. We ride at dawn." The call went out across the Apache reservation before the sun rose. Maria Running Bear used the tribal communication network to contact every warrior who was able to fight. The message was simple and clear. The Apache Nation needed 70 warriors to travel to the stars and honor an ancient promise. By noon, over 200 Apache men and women had volunteered to make the journey to New Arizona. They came from all parts of the reservation, leaving their jobs and families to answer the call of their chief. Some were young people who had just finished their military training. Others were older warriors who had fought in battles across the galaxy. All of them understood the importance of keeping their word. War Chief Daniel Stormcrow was 34 years old and had served in the Galactic Marines for 10 years before returning to his people. He was tall and strong with traditional tribal tattoos on his arms and chest. Daniel had fought against alien raiders on many different planets and was known as one of the best warriors in the human military. When he heard about the mission to New Arizona, he immediately volunteered to lead the expedition. "We can only take 70 warriors," Chief Running Bear told the assembled volunteers. "This number has special meaning in our traditions." 70 warriors fought at the Battle of Big Mountain in 1918. 70 warriors defended our reservation during the Earth Wars of 2156. Now 70 warriors will carry our honor to the stars. The selection process took several hours as the council members chose the best fighters from among the volunteers. They picked warriors who were skilled with both traditional Apache weapons and modern space combat equipment. Each warrior had to prove they could handle the long journey through hyperspace and fight effectively on an alien planet. Maria Running Bear was chosen as the mission's strategic advisor because of her education and knowledge of alien cultures. She had studied the Zephyrian raiders for her graduate degree and knew their tactics and weaknesses better than anyone else in the tribe. Maria was also skilled with computers and could hack into enemy communication systems. Elder Joseph Windwalker surprised everyone by volunteering to join the expedition. At 70 years old, many people thought he was too old for such a dangerous mission. But the elder insisted that the warriors would need spiritual guidance and traditional wisdom to succeed against their enemies. "The ancestors will speak through me," Elder Windwalker told Chief Running Bear. "The young warriors are brave and strong, but they will need the old ways to defeat these aliens." I have seen things in my visions that will help them in battle. The Apache Nation had its own spaceship called the Thunderbird. The ship was built 20 years ago when the tribe became wealthy from mining rare minerals found on their reservation land. The Thunderbird was smaller than the big military ships used by the Galactic Defense Force, but it was much faster and harder to detect on enemy sensors. Captain Lisa Hawk Feather was Daniel Stormcrow's younger sister and one of the best pilots in the human space fleet. She was 29 years old with short black hair and quick reflexes that made her perfect for flying dangerous missions. Lisa had been flying the Thunderbird for 5 years and knew every system on the ship better than anyone else. The warriors spent 3 days preparing for their journey to New Arizona. They practiced with their weapons in the desert training grounds where Apache fighters had learned to be warriors for thousands of years. Each warrior carried both traditional Apache weapons and modern military equipment. Their armor was made from advanced materials that could stop alien energy weapons, but it was decorated with traditional tribal patterns and symbols. Each warrior's armor was painted with the colors and designs of their individual clan. The armor looked beautiful, but was also practical for fighting in space and on alien planets. The weapons they carried were a mixture of old and new technology. Every warrior had a traditional war club that had been modified with plasma energy cores. The clubs could smash through alien armor and also fire energy blasts at distant targets. They also carried bows that shot guided energy arrows instead of regular arrows. Some warriors preferred to fight with traditional knives and tomahawks that had been enhanced with molecular cutting edges. These weapons could slice through almost any material and were perfect for close combat against alien enemies. The warriors also carried modern pulse rifles and plasma pistols as backup weapons. Communications. Specialist Peter Gray Wolf was 25 years old and responsible for keeping the warriors in contact with each other during battle. He had special equipment that could intercept and decode alien transmissions. Peter was also skilled at electronic warfare and could jam enemy sensors and communication systems. The Thunderbird's medical officer was Dr. Susan Red Cloud, a 32-year-old physician who had trained at the best medical schools on Earth. She understood both traditional Apache healing methods and advanced space medicine. Dr. Red Cloud would be responsible for keeping the warriors healthy during the long journey and treating any injuries they received in battle. Each warrior also carried personal items that connected them to their ancestors and their homeland. Many had small medicine bundles filled with sacred herbs and stones from the reservation. Others carried photographs of their families or pieces of turquoise jewelry that had been passed down through generations. The night before they left Earth, all 70 warriors gathered around a large fire in the center of the reservation. Elder Windwalker led them in traditional songs and prayers that had been sung by Apache warriors for centuries. The songs asked for protection from the spirits and courage in battle against their enemies. "We go to fight for people we have never met on a world we have never seen," Elder Windwalker told the assembled warriors. "But we fight for more than just strangers. We fight to keep the promise our ancestors made. We fight to show that the Apache Nation honors its word no matter how far we must travel or how dangerous the enemy." War Chief Stormcrow stood up and raised his war club toward the star-filled sky. "Tomorrow we begin a journey that will take us farther from home than any Apache warriors have ever traveled. But we carry the strength of our ancestors with us. We carry the wisdom of our people. We will not fail." The warriors spent the rest of the night in meditation and prayer, preparing their minds and spirits for the battle ahead. As the sun began to rise over the desert mountains, they boarded the Thunderbird and prepared to launch into space. Chief Running Bear stood at the edge of the landing pad and watched his warriors prepare for departure. His granddaughter Maria gave him a final hug before climbing aboard the ship. "Bring them home safely," the chief said to War Chief Stormcrow. "We will return with honor," Stormcrow replied. "The Apache Nation's word will be kept." The Thunderbird lifted off from the Apache reservation at dawn and climbed quickly through Earth's atmosphere into the darkness of space. Captain Lisa Hawk Feather guided the ship through the busy traffic around Earth's orbital stations and set course for the hyperspace jump point that would take them to New Arizona. The journey to New Arizona would take 14 hours through hyperspace. The Apache warriors had never traveled so far from Earth before, and many of them felt nervous about leaving their homeland behind. But they also felt excited about the adventure ahead and proud that their people had been chosen for such an important mission. War Chief Storm Crow gathered the warriors in the ship's main cargo bay for a briefing about their mission. The cargo bay had been converted into a meeting room with benches and display screens that showed maps and pictures of their destination. New Arizona is a frontier planet with red desert terrain similar to our homeland, Stormcrow explained. The planet has been colonized by humans for about 60 years. Most of the settlers are farmers and ranchers who came there to start new lives away from the crowded worlds of the inner systems. Maria, Running Bear, activated a holographic display that showed the planet's surface and the location of Jake Morrison's ranch. The ranch was positioned on high ground overlooking 3 major valleys where space trade routes converged. Anyone who controlled that location could monitor and tax all the commercial traffic passing through the system. The Zephyrian raiders have been attacking human settlements on New Arizona for over 5 years, Maria continued. They are insect-like aliens who fly in fast attack ships and strike without warning. The Zephyrians take whatever they want and kill anyone who tries to resist them. The holographic display changed to show pictures of Zephyrian warriors and their weapons. The aliens looked like giant praying mantises with 4 arms and sharp claws. They stood about 7 feet tall and moved very quickly in combat. Their ships were dark green and black with curved shapes that looked organic rather than mechanical. The Zephyrians are not as advanced as humans in terms of technology, Maria explained. But they are fierce fighters who show no mercy to their enemies. They attack in large swarms and use their superior numbers to overwhelm human defenses. Elder Windwalker stood up and walked to the front of the group. Despite his 70 years, he moved with the confidence of a man half his age. The other warriors listened respectfully as the elder began to speak. These alien raiders remind me of the cavalry soldiers who attacked our ancestors, Elder Windwalker said. They think that superior numbers and aggressive tactics will always defeat their enemies. But they do not understand the Apache way of fighting. The elder pulled out an old book that contained the collected stories and tactical knowledge of Apache warriors from throughout history. The book had been passed down through generations and translated into many languages as Apache culture spread to other planets. Our ancestors learned to fight enemies who had better weapons and more soldiers. Elder Windwalker continued. The Apache survived by being smarter and more adaptable than their enemies. We used stealth and surprise instead of direct attacks. We struck where the enemy was weakest and disappeared before they could respond. Communications specialist Peter Greywolf was monitoring radio transmissions from New Arizona and the surrounding space. His equipment could intercept messages from both human settlements and alien ships. What he heard was not encouraging news. War Chief, I am receiving distress signals from multiple human colonies on New Arizona, Peter reported. It looks like the Zephyrians are already beginning their attack. They have a large fleet in orbit around the planet. Captain Lisa Hawkfeather adjusted the ship's course to approach New Arizona from an unexpected direction. Instead of taking the direct route that most ships used, she planned to come in through an asteroid field that would hide the Thunderbird from enemy sensors. How big is this Zephyrian fleet? Stormcrow asked. Peter Greywolf worked with his equipment for several minutes before answering. I count at least 3 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and over 200 fighter craft. They have enough firepower to destroy every human settlement on the planet. The Apache warriors looked at each other with concern. They had expected to fight a small group of raiders, not a major alien invasion force. 70 warriors against thousands of enemy soldiers seemed like impossible odds, even for fighters as skilled as the Apache. But Elder Windwalker smiled when he heard about the size of the enemy force. This is good news, he said, surprising everyone in the cargo bay. When an enemy brings such a large army, it means they are afraid. They do not believe they can win with skill alone, so they try to win with numbers. War Chief Stormcrow nodded his agreement with the elder's words. Large armies move slowly and make noise. They are easy to detect and hard to coordinate. Small groups of warriors can strike at many different targets and confuse a large enemy force. Dr. Susan Redcloud had been studying medical reports about Zephyrian biology and physiology. She discovered some interesting facts that might help the Apache warriors in combat. The Zephyrians have excellent vision and hearing, but they have difficulty seeing in certain light conditions, Dr. Redcloud reported. They also communicate using high-frequency sounds that human ears cannot hear. If we can disrupt their communication frequencies, we might be able to confuse them during battle. Maria Running Bear was working with the ship's computer to analyze the Zephyrian attack patterns from previous raids. She found that the aliens always used the same basic strategy when attacking human settlements. The Zephyrians begin by bombing military targets and communication centers from orbit, Maria explained. Then they land ground forces to secure important locations and capture valuable resources. They usually leave civilian areas alone unless someone tries to resist them. War Chief Stormcrow studied the tactical information and began to form a plan for fighting the alien invasion force. He divided the 70 Apache warriors into 7 groups of 10 fighters each. This organization was based on traditional Apache clan structures that had been used in warfare for centuries. Each group would have a specific mission during the battle. Some groups would attack Zephyrian communication centers to disrupt their coordination. Other groups would strike at their fuel supplies and ammunition storage areas. The goal was to cause as much damage as possible while avoiding direct confrontations with large enemy forces. "We will not try to defeat their entire army," Stormcrow told his warriors. "Instead, we will make them afraid to stay on New Arizona. We will hit them so many times in so many different places that they will decide this planet is too dangerous to conquer," the Thunderbird continued its journey through hyperspace while the Apache warriors prepared their equipment and studied the mission plans. Each warrior checked their weapons and armor multiple times to make sure everything was working properly. They also reviewed the maps of New Arizona and memorized the locations of important targets. As the ship prepared to drop out of hyperspace near New Arizona, Captain Lisa Hawk Feather activated the ship's stealth systems. The Thunderbird would approach the planet invisibly, hiding among the asteroids and space debris that surrounded the system. "We are 1 hour away from New Arizona," Captain Hawk Feather announced over the ship's communication system. "All warriors should prepare for combat deployment." Elder Windwalker led the warriors in a final prayer ceremony, asking their ancestors for strength and wisdom in the battle ahead. The warriors painted their faces with traditional war paint and checked their weapons one last time. War Chief Stormcrow looked out through the ship's windows at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there was a planet full of people who needed help, and an army of alien raiders who thought they could take whatever they wanted. "Today we prove that the Apache Nation keeps its promises," Stormcrow said to his warriors. "Today we show these aliens what happens when they threaten innocent people." The Thunderbird dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Arizona solar system. Captain Lisa Hawk Feather immediately activated all stealth systems and guided the ship into a dense asteroid field that would hide them from enemy sensors. Through the ship's windows, the Apache warriors could see New Arizona in the distance, a red planet that looked remarkably similar to their desert homeland on Earth. Communications specialist Peter Gray Wolf was busy intercepting radio transmissions from around the planet. His equipment picked up distress calls from human settlements, military communications from orbiting Zephyrian ships, and the high-frequency chittering sounds that the alien raiders used to coordinate their attacks. "War Chief, the situation is worse than we expected," Peter reported grimly. "The Zephyrians have already begun bombing the major human cities. I count at least 50,000 alien ground troops landing at strategic locations across the planet." War Chief Stormcrow studied the tactical display that showed the positions of enemy forces. The Zephyrian fleet had formed a blockade around New Arizona to prevent any human ships from escaping or calling for help. 3 massive alien cruisers hung in high orbit like predatory birds, their weapons aimed at the planet below. "What about Jake Morrison's ranch?" Stormcrow asked. "Are the aliens attacking that location?" Maria Running Bear used the ship's long-range sensors to scan the area around the ranch. She found something that made her worried and excited at the same time. "The ranch appears to be undamaged so far," Maria reported, "but there are at least 2,000 Zephyrian troops moving toward that location. They know how strategically important it is for controlling the trade routes." Elder Windwalker approached the tactical display and studied the enemy positions with the experienced eye of someone who had fought many battles. Despite his advanced age, the Elder's mind was sharp and his understanding of warfare was deeper than any military computer. "The aliens are making the same mistake that many of our historical enemies made," Elder Windwalker observed. "They are spreading their forces too thin across the planet. They think that controlling many locations will guarantee their victory." Dr. Susan Redcloud had been analyzing the medical data about human casualties from the Zephyrian attacks. The reports were disturbing but also revealed important information about alien tactics and weapons. The Zephyrians are using non-lethal stunning weapons against most human civilians, Dr. Red Cloud reported. They seem to want to capture people alive rather than kill them. This suggests they plan to use humans as slave labor or bargaining chips. War Chief Stormcrow nodded as he processed this information. An enemy that wanted to capture rather than kill would have different weaknesses than one focused purely on destruction. That gives us an advantage, Stormcrow said. The aliens will be more cautious about using their most powerful weapons if they want to keep their prisoners alive. They will also need to guard the captured humans, which divides their attention. Captain Lisa Hawkfeather had been studying the asteroid field around New Arizona and found something interesting. Hidden among the larger rocks were several abandoned mining stations that had been used by human corporations before the Zephyrian raids began. War Chief, there are old mining facilities throughout this asteroid field, Captain Hawkfeather reported. Some of them still have functional equipment and communication systems. We could use them as staging areas for our attacks. The plan that emerged from these discussions was bold and dangerous. The Apache warriors would split into small groups and establish hidden bases throughout the asteroid field and on New Arizona's surface. From these concealed positions, they would launch coordinated strikes against key Zephyrian targets. We will not try to meet their army in open battle, Stormcrow explained to his warriors. Instead, we will be like ghosts that appear suddenly to strike and then vanish before the enemy can respond. We will make them afraid of every shadow and every sound. The first phase of the operation began immediately. 7 teams of 10 warriors each prepared to deploy to different locations around the planet. Each team had specialized equipment and a specific mission objective. Team Alpha, led by War Chief Stormcrow himself, would infiltrate Jake Morrison's ranch and defend it from the approaching Zephyrian ground forces. This was the most important objective because controlling the ranch meant controlling the entire trade route system. Team Beta, under the command of Maria Running Bear, would target the Zephyrian communication networks. Their job was to hack into alien computer systems and disrupt the coordination between different enemy units. Teams Gamma and Delta would attack Zephyrian fuel depots and ammunition storage facilities. Without adequate supplies, the alien forces would be unable to maintain their offensive operations. Team Echo would focus on rescuing human prisoners and evacuating civilians from combat zones. Elder Windwalker would accompany this team to provide spiritual guidance and traditional healing knowledge teams. Foxtrot and Golf would conduct diversionary attacks designed to confuse the enemy and draw their attention away from the main objectives. These teams would strike at multiple targets quickly and then disappear into the wilderness. The deployment began in the pre-dawn darkness of New Arizona's night cycle. The Thunderbird approached the planet using a trajectory that kept it hidden behind one of the planet's 3 moons. Captain Hawkfeather expertly piloted the ship through the upper atmosphere while maintaining stealth mode. One by one, the Apache teams launched from the Thunderbird in small stealth pods that could carry 10 warriors each. The pods were designed to look like meteorites on enemy sensors, and they used heat-absorbing materials to avoid detection by infrared scanners. War Chief Stormcrow's pod was the first to land, touching down silently in a rocky canyon about 5 miles from Jake Morrison's ranch. The warriors quickly buried their landing pod and activated camouflage equipment that made them nearly invisible to both visual and electronic detection. Through his night vision equipment, Stormcrow could see the lights of the ranch buildings in the distance. Zephyrian scout ships were circling the area like vultures, and columns of alien ground troops were advancing across the desert toward the ranch. All teams report, Stormcrow whispered into his communication device. One by one, the other team leaders confirmed that they had landed safely and were moving toward their assigned targets. The Apache warriors were now scattered across New Arizona, but they remained connected by secure communication links that the Zephyrians could not intercept. Elder Windwalker's voice came through the communication system with calm authority. The spirits of our ancestors are with us. The wind carries their strength to our weapons and their wisdom to our hearts. As the first light of dawn began to appear on the horizon, 70 Apache warriors moved through the alien landscape of New Arizona, like shadows from another world. They carried with them the traditions and fighting skills of their people, adapted for warfare among the stars. The Zephyrian raiders had conquered many worlds and defeated many enemies. They believed that their superior numbers and aggressive tactics made them invincible against any human resistance. But they had never faced warriors who fought with the ancient wisdom of the Apache nation. War Chief Storm Crow looked toward the rising sun and remembered the words of his grandfather. A true warrior does not fight to destroy his enemy. He fights to protect what he loves. Today, the Apache would protect the promise made by their ancestors to a dying cowboy's family. Today, they would show the galaxy that some bonds of honor transcended time and space. The battle for New Arizona was about to begin. The sun rose slowly over the red desert of New Arizona, casting long shadows across the landscape where Jake Morrison had spent his final years. War Chief Storm Crow and his 9 warriors lay hidden among the rocks overlooking the old cowboy's ranch, watching as Zephyrian ground forces approached the property from 3 different directions. The alien soldiers moved in organized columns across the desert floor. Their insect-like bodies were covered in dark green armor that gleamed in the morning sunlight. Each Zephyrian carried energy weapons and moved with the quick, jerky motions of their species. There were over 200 alien troops converging on the ranch. Storm Crow used his binoculars to study the ranch buildings below. He could see that Katie Barnes was still there, hiding in Jake Morrison's house with several other human civilians who had sought shelter during the attack. The young woman had refused to abandon the ranch where she had lived for so many years. Team Alpha in position, Storm Crow whispered into his communication device. Beginning Phase 1 of the operation. Around the planet, the other Apache teams were also moving into position for their coordinated strikes. Maria Running Bear's team had infiltrated a Zephyrian communication center built inside an abandoned human mining facility. The aliens had converted the facility into a command post for coordinating their planetary invasion. Team Beta ready, Maria reported quietly. I have access to their computer network. Waiting for your signal to begin electronic warfare operations. Elder Windwalker's team was positioned near a large Zephyrian prisoner camp where hundreds of captured humans were being held. The aliens had built the camp in a valley surrounded by high cliffs, making escape difficult for the prisoners. But the same cliffs also provided excellent hiding places for Apache warriors. Team Echo in position, Elder Windwalker reported. The spirits tell me that today many captives will be freed. The other teams reported their readiness as well. Teams Gamma and Delta had reached the alien fuel depots and ammunition storage areas. Teams Foxtrot and Golf were prepared to begin their diversionary attacks at multiple locations across the planet. War Chief Storm Crow checked his weapons one final time. He carried a traditional Apache war club that had been enhanced with a plasma energy core, along with a modern pulse rifle and several energy grenades. His armor was painted with the sacred symbols of his clan and decorated with eagle feathers from his homeland. All teams, begin the attack, Storm Crow commanded. The battle for New Arizona began with complete silence. The Apache warriors struck their targets simultaneously across the planet, using stealth and surprise to overcome the numerical superiority of their enemies. At Jake Morrison's ranch, Storm Crow's team moved like ghosts through the morning shadows. They had painted their faces with traditional war paint and moved with the fluid grace that Apache warriors had perfected over centuries of desert warfare. The first Zephyrian patrol never knew what hit them. Apache warriors appeared from behind rocks and bushes, striking with their enhanced war clubs before disappearing back into the landscape. The aliens' high-frequency communication sounds turned into screams of alarm as their soldiers began falling to invisible attackers. Storm Crow himself targeted the Zephyrian commander, a large alien wearing more elaborate armor than the regular soldiers. The war chief moved through the desert like flowing water, avoiding detection until he was close enough to strike. His war club connected with the alien commander's head, and the creature collapsed without making a sound. Meanwhile, Maria Running Bear was conducting her own form of warfare inside the Zephyrian command center. Her fingers flew across her portable computer interface as she hacked into the alien communication network. The Zephyrians used a complex system of high-frequency signals to coordinate their forces, but Maria had studied their language and could decode their transmissions. Team Beta has control of enemy communications, Maria reported, beginning to send false orders to their field commanders. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zephyrian units across the planet began receiving contradictory orders that sent them marching in circles or attacking empty locations. Some alien commanders tried to contact their superiors for clarification, But Maria intercepted these communications and replaced them with even more confusing instructions. Elder Windwalker's team struck the prisoner camp with the precision of a lightning bolt. The Apache warriors had approached through hidden canyons that the aliens had not bothered to guard properly. The Zephyrians believed that the high cliffs made escape impossible, so they had concentrated most of their guards at the main entrance to the camp. The attack began when Elder Windwalker started singing an ancient Apache war song in his native language. The haunting melody echoed off the canyon walls and seemed to come from everywhere at once. The alien guards became nervous and confused as they tried to locate the source of the strange sounds. While the aliens were distracted by the elders singing, the other Apache warriors scaled the cliffs using traditional climbing techniques combined with modern equipment. They descended into the camp on nearly invisible cables, landing silently among the surprised guards. The battle at the prison camp was swift and decisive. The Apache warriors used non-lethal stunning weapons to incapacitate the alien guards without killing them. Elder Windwalker had insisted that unnecessary killing was not the Apache way, even when fighting enemies. Team Echo has secured the prison camp, Elder Windwalker reported, beginning evacuation of human prisoners. The coordinated attacks were having their intended effect on the Zephyrian forces. Teams Gamma and Delta had successfully destroyed several fuel depots and ammunition storage facilities, causing massive explosions that could be seen from orbit. Teams Foxtrot and Golf were conducting hit-and-run attacks that kept large numbers of alien troops chasing phantoms across the desert. But the most important battle was still taking place at Jake Morrison's ranch. War Chief Stormcrow's team had eliminated the advanced scouts and communication specialists, but the main body of Zephyrian troops was still approaching the ranch buildings. Stormcrow made a difficult decision. Instead of continuing to fight from hiding, he would make a stand at the ranch itself. Jake Morrison had died defending this land, and the Apache warriors would honor his memory by protecting it with their lives. Katie Barnes, "This is War Chief Stormcrow of the Apache Nation," he said into his radio, broadcasting on the frequency used by human civilians. "Jake Morrison sent for us before he died. We are here to protect you and his ranch." Katie's voice came back over the radio, filled with surprise and hope. "You're really here?" Jake said the Apache would come, but I didn't believe him. "We keep our promises," Stormcrow replied. "Stay in the house and keep your head down. This will be over soon." The main Zephyrian assault began just as the sun reached its highest point in the sky. Over 100 alien soldiers charged across the open ground toward the ranch buildings, their energy weapons firing constantly. They expected to overwhelm any human defenders through sheer numbers and firepower, but they were not prepared for what they encountered. Apache warriors seemed to materialize from the very landscape itself, rising from concealed positions among the rocks and bushes. The aliens found themselves under attack from all directions by enemies who moved like desert spirits. Stormcrow led the defense of the main ranch house, using the building's thick adobe walls for cover, while his warriors struck at the aliens from hidden positions. The war chief's plasma-enhanced war club could destroy alien weapons and armor with a single blow, and his tactical skills kept the Zephyrian forces confused and disorganized. The battle raged for over an hour, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Apache warriors fought with the skill and determination of their ancestors, combined with advanced weapons and armor that made them nearly invincible against their enemies. When the last Zephyrian soldier had been defeated or driven away, Stormcrow stood in the yard of Jake Morrison's ranch and looked up at the alien ship still orbiting overhead. The battle for the ranch was won, but the war for New Arizona was far from over. "All teams report status," Stormcrow commanded. The responses came back one by one, all positive. Every Apache team had successfully completed their primary objectives, and the Zephyrian invasion force was in complete disarray. "Phase 1 complete," Stormcrow announced. Beginning Phase 2 operations. The real battle was just beginning. The Zephyrian fleet commanders in orbit around New Arizona were becoming increasingly frustrated and confused by the reports they were receiving from their ground forces. What had begun as a simple conquest operation was turning into a nightmare of missing patrols, destroyed supply depots, and contradictory communications. Admiral Zexkar, the supreme commander of the Zephyrian invasion fleet, studied the tactical displays in his command ship with growing alarm. His species had conquered dozens of human worlds using the same basic strategy, but something was different about New Arizona. The human resistance was unlike anything the Zephyrians had encountered before. "Report," Admiral Zexkar commanded in the high-frequency chittering language of his people. "Sir, we have lost contact with over half our ground forces," his communications officer replied nervously. "The remaining units are reporting attacks by small groups of humans who appear and disappear like ghosts. Our troops cannot locate their main base or predict where they will strike next." Down on the planet's surface, War Chief Stormcrow was coordinating the second phase of the Apache operation from Jake Morrison's ranch house. Katie Barnes had provided him with detailed maps of the local area, including the locations of caves, canyons, and other hiding places that the alien forces might not know about. "The enemy is confused and demoralized," Stormcrow reported to his team leaders. "Now we begin the psychological warfare phase. We will make them so afraid of staying on New Arizona that they will choose to leave rather than continue fighting." Maria Running Bear's team had completely taken over the Zephyrian communication network. Not only could she intercept and decode all alien transmissions, but she could also send false messages that appeared to come from legitimate Zephyrian commanders. "War Chief, I am ready to begin broadcasting the fear messages," Maria reported. "I have recorded audio files of Apache war cries and traditional hunting songs. When I transmit these on Zephyrian communication frequencies, it will sound like the voices of angry spirits to their soldiers." Elder Windwalker had successfully evacuated over 800 human prisoners from the alien camps. The freed civilians were now hiding in a network of natural caves that the Apache warriors had discovered in the mountains near the prison sites. The Elder was using his traditional healing knowledge to treat injured prisoners, while other Apache warriors organized the evacuation. "Many of the freed humans wish to join our fight against the aliens," Elder Windwalker reported. "They have seen what the Apache Nation can accomplish and want to help defend their world." Stormcrow considered this request carefully. Untrained civilians could be more dangerous than helpful in combat, but their knowledge of local terrain and Zephyrian tactics might be valuable. "Accept volunteers who have military experience or useful skills," Stormcrow decided, "but keep them in support roles away from direct combat. Their safety is our responsibility now." The diversionary attacks by teams Foxtrot and Golf were having exactly the effect that Stormcrow had hoped for. The Zephyrian commanders were sending large numbers of troops to chase small groups of Apache warriors across the desert, leaving their important installations poorly defended. Team Gamma had used this distraction to infiltrate the main Zephyrian supply base, where tons of fuel and ammunition were stored in underground bunkers. The Apache warriors planted explosive charges throughout the facility, and then disappeared back into the desert before the aliens realized what had happened. The explosion that followed could be seen from space. The entire supply base vanished in a massive fireball that lit up the night sky and sent shockwaves across half the continent. Without adequate supplies, the Zephyrian ground forces would be unable to continue their offensive operations for much longer. Dr. Susan Red Cloud had established a field hospital in one of the mountain caves where she was treating both Apache warriors and rescued human civilians. Her combination of advanced medical technology and traditional Apache healing methods was proving remarkably effective at helping people recover from their injuries. "War Chief, I have discovered something interesting about Zephyrian biology," Dr. Red Cloud reported. "Their nervous systems are extremely sensitive to certain sound frequencies. The war songs that Elder Windwalker has been singing are actually causing physical discomfort to any aliens who hear them." This information gave Stormcrow an idea for a new type of psychological warfare. If traditional Apache music could cause physical pain to Zephyrian soldiers, then broadcasting it on a large scale might be an effective weapon. "Maria, can you transmit Elder Windwalker's war songs through the alien communication network at high volume?" Stormcrow asked. "Absolutely," Maria replied with excitement. "I can override their entire communication system and broadcast the songs directly into every Zephyrian helmet and ship speaker on the planet." The Apache warriors spent the next several hours preparing for what would become known as the Battle of the Singing Spirits. Elder Windwalker recorded dozens of traditional Apache songs, war cries, and ceremonial chants. These recordings were then enhanced with electronic amplification and transmitted simultaneously to every Zephyrian communication device on New Arizona. The effect on the alien forces was immediate and devastating. Zephyrian soldiers began removing their helmets and communication equipment to escape the painful sounds. Without their communication systems, the alien units could no longer coordinate their movements or receive orders from their commanders. Many Zephyrian troops simply abandoned their positions and fled toward their landing ships, desperate to escape the haunting voices that seemed to follow them everywhere. Others huddled in their bunkers and refused to come out, believing that they were under attack by supernatural forces. Admiral Zexkar watched in disbelief as his invasion force disintegrated before his eyes. Thousands of highly trained soldiers were retreating from an enemy they could not see or understand. The admiral had never encountered anything like this in his military career. "Sir, our ground commanders are requesting immediate evacuation," the communications officer reported. "They say the planet is haunted by angry spirits who cannot be fought with conventional weapons." "Spirits?" Admiral Zexkar replied with contempt. "There are no such things as spirits. These are just humans using psychological warfare tactics." But even as he spoke, the admiral could hear strange singing voices coming through his own ship's communication system. The haunting melody seemed to echo through every corridor and room on the ship, making it impossible for the crew to concentrate on their duties. Captain Lisa Hawk Feather had been monitoring the situation from the Thunderbird, which remained hidden in the asteroid field around New Arizona. She could see the Zephyrian fleet beginning to show signs of confusion and panic as the alien ships started moving erratically in their orbital positions. "War Chief, the enemy fleet is breaking formation," Captain Hawk Feather reported. "Several ships are already moving toward the edge of the system. I think they are preparing to retreat." Stormcrow smiled as he received this news. The Apache strategy was working even better than he had hoped. By attacking the aliens' minds and spirits rather than just their bodies, the warriors had found a way to defeat a much larger enemy force. "All teams begin the final phase," Stormcrow commanded. "Drive the remaining aliens off our planet." The Apache warriors emerged from their hiding places all across New Arizona and began advancing on the remaining Zephyrian positions. They moved openly now, no longer needing to hide from their demoralized enemies. The sight of painted warriors chanting ancient songs while carrying advanced weapons was too much for the already terrified alien soldiers. Within 6 hours, every Zephyrian ground force on New Arizona had either surrendered or fled to their ships. The alien fleet quickly departed the system, broadcasting warnings to other Zephyrian units to avoid the cursed world where spirits fought alongside humans. As the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, War Chief Stormcrow stood in the yard of Jake Morrison's ranch and looked up at the star-filled sky. The old cowboy's promise had been kept, and the Apache nation had once again proven that courage and honor could triumph over superior numbers and technology. Katie Barnes emerged from the ranch house and walked over to where Storm Crow was standing. Her eyes were filled with tears of gratitude and amazement. "Jake was right," she said quietly. "He said the Apache would come when we needed them most."
"How can we ever thank you?"
Storm Crow placed his hand on the young woman's shoulder and smiled. "No thanks are needed. We simply honored our ancestors' word. That is what warriors do." 3 days after the Zephyrian fleet fled from New Arizona, the Apache warriors gathered at Jake Morrison's ranch for a ceremony that would honor both the living and the dead. The red desert landscape was peaceful now, with only the wind moving across the empty plains where alien soldiers had once marched. War Chief Storm Crow stood beside Jake Morrison's grave, which Katie Barnes had marked with a simple wooden cross. The old cowboy lay buried on a hill overlooking his ranch, just as he had requested before his death. The morning sun cast long shadows across the desert, and the air was filled with the sound of birds returning to their nests. Elder Windwalker began the ceremony by burning sage and sweetgrass in the traditional Apache way. The smoke rose into the clear sky as the elder spoke prayers in his native language, asking the spirits to guide Jake Morrison to the land of his ancestors. This man kept his word across 500 years and thousands of light years, Elder Windwalker said in English so that Katie Barnes and the other human settlers could understand. He honored a promise made by his great-grandfather to our people. Such honor deserves to be remembered for all time. Maria Running Bear had spent the past 2 days working with the human colonial government to establish a permanent memorial at the ranch. The memorial would tell the story of Jake Morrison's promise and the Apache warriors who traveled across the galaxy to keep their word. "The legal documents are complete," Maria reported to Chief Running Bear via quantum communication link. Jake Morrison's ranch will become a historical site protected by both human and Apache law. No one will ever be allowed to build military bases or commercial facilities on this land. The surviving human colonists had gathered at the ranch to thank the Apache warriors for saving their planet. Over 3,000 men, women, and children had come from settlements across New Arizona to attend the ceremony. Many of them brought gifts of food, handmade crafts, and precious stones found on their farms. Katie Barnes approached War Chief Stormcrow with tears in her eyes. She carried a small wooden box that contained some of Jake Morrison's personal belongings. "Jake wanted you to have this," Katie said as she opened the box. Inside was an old photograph showing a young Apache warrior standing next to a cavalry soldier in a frontier military uniform. The photograph was over 500 years old but had been carefully preserved by Jake's family through many generations. "This is my great-grandfather, Frank Morrison, with the Apache warrior who saved his life," Katie explained. "Jake's family kept this picture to remember the debt they owed to your people. He said that if the Apache ever came to help us, they should have it back." Stormcrow accepted the photograph with great reverence. The Apache warrior in the picture looked proud and strong, with traditional face paint and feathers in his hair. This was visual proof of the bond between their peoples that had lasted across centuries. "This warrior was my great-great-grandfather," Stormcrow said, with wonder in his voice. "His name was Running Wolf, and he was known for his courage and wisdom. My family has stories about him saving a young soldier's life, but we never knew what happened to that soldier." Dr. Susan Red Cloud had been treating the last of the injured civilians and Apache warriors in her field hospital. All of the wounded were recovering well, and she was proud that her team had not lost a single person during the entire operation. "War Chief, all our people are ready to return home," Dr. Red Cloud reported. "The rescued prisoners have been reunited with their families, and the colonial government has medical facilities to care for anyone who still needs treatment." Communication specialist Peter Gray Wolf had been monitoring space communications to make sure that no other alien forces were approaching New Arizona. The Zephyrian fleet had broadcast warnings to their species about the cursed world where spirits fought alongside humans, and it appeared that other alien raiders were avoiding the planet. "The communication networks are clear," Peter reported. "No hostile ships detected anywhere in this sector of space. The humans of New Arizona should be safe from alien attacks for the foreseeable future." Captain Lisa Hawk Feather had prepared the Thunderbird for the journey back to Earth. The ship's cargo holds were filled with gifts from the grateful colonists, including rare minerals, handmade artwork, and written testimonials about the Apache warriors' heroic actions. "All systems ready for departure," Captain Hawk Feather announced. "We can leave whenever you give the order, War Chief." But Stormcrow was not quite ready to leave New Arizona. There was one more thing he needed to do to complete the mission properly. He walked to a flat area near Jake Morrison's grave and began setting up a traditional Apache prayer wheel made of stones and eagle feathers. "What are you doing, brother?" asked Elder Windwalker, who had noticed Stormcrow's activities. "I am marking this place as sacred ground," Stormcrow replied. "Not just for Jake Morrison, but for all the brave people who died defending their homes against the alien raiders. This land has been blessed with the blood of heroes from both our peoples." The Apache warriors spent their final hours on New Arizona, sharing stories and songs with the human colonists. Children who had been terrified by the alien invasion now laughed and played games with the painted warriors. Adults who had lost everything during the Zephyrian attacks found hope in the knowledge that there were people in the galaxy who would risk their lives to help strangers. As the sun began to set on their last day on New Arizona, the 70 Apache warriors boarded the Thunderbird and prepared for the long journey home to Earth. Katie Barnes and hundreds of other colonists gathered at the ranch to see them off. "Will we ever see you again?" Katie asked Stormcrow as he prepared to board his ship. "The Apache Nation always remembers its friends," Stormcrow replied. "If you ever need our help again, send word to Earth. We will come." The Thunderbird lifted off from New Arizona as the stars appeared in the darkening sky. The ship climbed through the atmosphere and entered hyperspace for the journey back to Earth. Through the ship's windows, the Apache warriors could see New Arizona shrinking in the distance until it became just another point of light among the billions of stars. During the long trip home, the warriors reflected on what they had accomplished. They had traveled farther from their homeland than any Apache people in history. They had fought enemies unlike any their ancestors had ever faced, and they had proven that the values of courage, honor, and keeping one's word were just as important among the stars as they had been on Earth. When the Thunderbird finally arrived at Earth and landed on the Apache reservation, Chief Running Bear was waiting at the landing pad with the entire tribal council. The old chief embraced his granddaughter Maria and welcomed the warriors home with traditional songs and ceremonies. "You have brought great honor to our people," Chief Running Bear told the assembled warriors. "The story of your victory will be told for many generations to come." War Chief Stormcrow presented the chief with the photograph of their ancestor and Frank Morrison. "Our debt to the Morrison family has been paid in full," Stormcrow announced. "But we have gained something more valuable than money or land. We have proven that the Apache way of life can flourish anywhere in the universe." In the weeks that followed, news of the Apache victory on New Arizona spread throughout human space. Other planets facing alien threats began requesting help from the Apache nation. The Tribal Council decided to establish a permanent space force that would respond to calls for help from human colonies across the galaxy. The Apache Space Force became legendary for their courage, skill, and honor. They never fought for money or conquest, only to protect innocent people and keep promises made by their ancestors. Their distinctive ships with traditional tribal markings became symbols of hope for colonists on distant worlds. Katie Barnes kept Jake Morrison's ranch exactly as he had left it, turning it into a museum and memorial site. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the place where an old cowboy's promise had summoned warriors from the stars. The ranch became a symbol of the bonds that could unite different peoples in the face of common threats. And in the desert night of New Arizona, when the wind blew across the Red Plains, settlers sometimes claimed they could hear the distant sound of Apache war songs carried on the breeze. Whether these were the voices of spirits or simply the memory of heroes, no one could say for certain. But everyone agreed that the promise had been kept and that honor had triumphed across the vastness of space.